everyone, very good evening to all. So we are continuing with the chapter called Nutrition in Animal, and in this part we are covering nutrition in human being. In this part we have already covered the ingestion of food, digestion, okay, and in different part of the alimentary canal, and now we are going to cover today the absorption, assimilation and ingestion part. Before that, we are going to cover one of the fact that how do we get hiccups. It's very important. Okay, so let's discuss how do we get hiccups generally. So we can blame your diaphragm. Okay, what is diaphragm? It is nothing but the muscular organ which is present on at the beneath of the ribs cavity, by which we can perform respiration. Due to contraction and relaxation of the diaphragm, we perform the respiration. Okay, so we can blame your diaphragm and arched muscles. Okay, these are nothing but the arched muscles like this below the lungs, and due to which we can perform the respiration. Okay, for hiccups. Okay, we used to blame that diaphragm, but let me we had to discuss by which abnormalities we are getting the hiccups. So normally when we inhale, the diaphragm contracts. Okay, that means inhale means taking air inside the lungs like this. This is the inhalation. Okay, means diaphragm goes down to help fill the air into the lungs. That means air enters inside the lungs from surrounding. And when we exhale, the diaphragm expands, means rises up, due to which higher pressure region increases inside the ribs cavity, and air from the lungs release into the atmosphere, and this is called as exhalation or breathing out. But sometimes says when we eat too quickly, okay, sometimes what happens generally when we used to eat quickly in hurry, the diaphragm goes down with a jerk. Okay, so there is the disturbance between the contraction and the relaxation of the diaphragm, which causes air enters very fast in air. Okay, the air rush in that particular part called ribs cavity due to the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the diaphragm disturbed, due to which air enters through the lungs from surrounding jerkily. Jerk means there is no regular, though no rhythmic contraction and relaxation takes place for that particular period of time. The air rushing in, okay, and causes the flap of the top of the windpipe to snap shut briefly, and which produces the hiccup. Okay, which produces the hiccup. Okay, and we generally used to have hic sound of the hiccup. Okay, then we used to produce the sound like this. This may happen to the number of times, and most hiccup lasts only for few minutes. Okay, somewhere like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, some may last for 2, 3 to 5 minutes also. It depends on person to person and the jerkness of the diaphragm. The common remedy is drinking a glass of cold water is nothing but the remedy for hiccups. And for that, I'm just going to show you one video also by which you can understand that properly. Okay, everyone. So now we are going to this video in order to understand how hiccups takes place.
Charles Osborne began to hiccup in 1922 after a hog fell on top of him. He wasn't cured until 68 years later, and is now listed by Guinness as the world record holder for hiccup longevity. Meanwhile, Florida teen Jennifer Mee may hold the record for the most frequent hiccups, 50 times per minute for more than 4 weeks in 2007. So, what causes hiccups? Doctors point out that a round of hiccups often follows from stimuli that stretch the stomach, like swallowing air or too rapid eating or drinking. Others associate hiccups with intense emotions or our response to them: laughing, sobbing, anxiety, and excitement. Let's look at what happens when we hiccup. It begins with an involuntary spasm or sudden contraction of the diaphragm, the large dome-shaped muscle below our lungs that we use to inhale air. This is followed almost immediately by the sudden closure of the vocal cords and the opening between them, which is called the glottis. The movement of the diaphragm initiates a sudden intake of air, but the closure of the vocal cords stops it from entering the windpipe and reaching the lungs. It also creates the characteristic sound, hic. To date, there is no known function for hiccups. They don't seem to provide any medical or physiological advantage. Why begin to inhale air only to suddenly stop it from actually entering the lungs? Anatomical structures or physiological mechanisms with no apparent purpose present challenges to evolutionary biologists. Do such structures serve some hidden function that hasn't yet been discovered? Or are they relics of our evolutionary past, having once served some important purpose only to persist into the present as vestigial remnants? One idea is that hiccups began many millions of years before the appearance of humans. The lung is thought to have evolved as a structure to allow early fish, many of which lived in warm, stagnant water with little oxygen, to take advantage of the abundant oxygen in the air overhead. When descendants of these animals later moved on to land, they moved from gill-based ventilation to air breathing with lungs. That's similar to the much more rapid changes faced by frogs today as they transition from tadpoles with gills to adults with lungs. This hypothesis suggests that the hiccup is a relic of the ancient transition from water to land. An inhalation that could move water over gills, followed by a rapid closure of the glottis preventing water from entering the lungs. That's supported by evidence which suggests that the neural patterning involved in generating a hiccup is almost identical to that responsible for respiration in amphibians. Another group of scientists believe that the reflex is retained in us today because it actually provides an important advantage. They point out that true hiccups are found only in mammals, and that they're not retained in birds, lizards, turtles, or any other exclusively air-breathing animals. Further, hiccups appear in human babies long before birth, and are far more common in infants than adults. Their explanation for this involves the uniquely mammalian activity of nursing. The ancient hiccup reflex may have been adapted by mammals to help remove air from the stomach as a sort of glorified burp. The sudden expansion of the diaphragm would raise air from the stomach, while a closure of the glottis would prevent milk from entering the lungs. Sometimes a bout of hiccups will go on, and we try home remedies, sipping continuously from a glass of cold water, holding one's breath, a mouthful of honey or peanut butter, breathing into a paper bag, or being suddenly frightened. Unfortunately, scientists have yet to verify that any one cure works better or more consistently than others. However, we do know one thing that definitely doesn't work.
Now we are going to cover the absorption, and which is the next step in human digestive system. So absorption is nothing but whatever the food material, or we can say the complex compound, which are being break down into simpler form during the digestion process. This nutrition have to be absorbed in our blood with the help of, in small intestine we have like finger like projection. Okay, suppose I'm just drawing the one diagram here. Suppose this is the small intestine, and in small intestine we have the finger like projection. These finger like projections are called as villi. Okay, one villi is called as villus. The villus is the singular form and villi is the plural form. Okay, so we have many like villi inside the wall or inner lining wall of the small intestine, and they help in absorption of nutrition from the digested food. Okay, let's discuss here. Even though digestion continues in the small intestine, okay, so in small intestine digestion process also takes place. The main job of the small intestine is to absorb the nutrition obtained as a result of the digestion. Okay, so whatever the food are being broken down into the simpler form that have to be absorbed in our small intestines. Okay, everyone? Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Next, the lining of the inner lining of the small intestine have the finger-like projection. Finger-like projection called villi. Okay. Similar form is called as villus. That increases the large surface area in order to absorb the nutrition from the food. This makes absorption more efficient. If large surface area is going to provide by the villi, more nutrition will going to absorb. Each villus has a network of fine blood vessels. Okay, so suppose here we have that villi. On the villi, we have again the microvilli on its upper surface, and inside we have the network of blood capillaries. So nutrition, when they get absorbed by the villi, those nutrition get mixed into the blood in blood capillaries, and these nutrition are going to supply all over the body where they are going to use for energy production and other purposes. Nutrients are absorbed into the blood present in these like fine blood vessels called blood capillaries. Fine blood vessels are called as blood capillaries where nutrients is going to absorb. Nutrients are going to absorb. The chyme means that undigested food which is passes from stomach to small intestine. This is called beta chyme. Now passes through the large intestine, and in large intestine, just do remember, very important, there is no digestion process takes place in large intestine. Only absorption of water and minerals and ions like electrolytes, we used to call them electrolytes, are going to absorb in large intestine. So see, in small intestine absorption reaction takes place already, and in large intestine also absorption takes place. So that absorption is called as reabsorption. Okay, it is called as reabsorption. Okay, so this is all about absorption process which takes place inside the alimentary canal, means in large intestine, even in small intestine. So next part we have assimilation, and again it is very important. The nutrition that are absorbed in the blood are transported to the rest part of the body for energy production, for bodybuilding, or to protect our like body from various diseases. So transportation of the nutrient where it is going to use with the help of blood is called as assimilation. The final product of the carbohydrate digestion is the glucose, and it is going to break down into the carbon dioxide and water. Okay, and it releases energy in the form of ATP, and for oxidation of glucose we require oxygen also, that's why we are breathing. Okay, so oxygen and glucose, okay, let me write here, oxygen and glucose. So glucose have formula C6H12O6 is the glucose. It is going to react with oxygen to form carbon dioxide 6CO2 plus 6H2O and releases energy. Okay, and that energy is going to utilize by the cell to perform different functions. Okay, amino acids are used for
Sir, this
repairing.
formula works in photosynthesis, right?
No. It is for the oxidation of food inside our body.
Okay, sir.
Yes. Okay, so amino acid is nothing but the simple form of the protein which are used for the repairing the worn out cells and tissues. Okay, whatever the cell which get ruptured during the many metabolic activity, they used to get repair and maintained with the help of amino acid. Fatty acids and glycerol act as an energy reserve and are stored for the further use. Okay, so the extra, or we can say that extra glucose is going to deposit in the form of glycogen. Okay, in our body itself, and which forms fatty acid or fat globules or glycerol. Okay, and it is nothing but the reserve food for the future use. It is nothing but the reserve food for future use. Okay. Last but not the least part of our digestive system is called as egestion. So egestion is nothing but the removal of waste material out from the body. Is called as egestion. After absorption and reabsorption, okay, of water, minerals from and the nutrient from the food that digested food, okay, even in large intestine, the undigested food becomes semi-solid because water is been absorbed in large intestine through that chyme, so that becomes semi-solid. Okay, it is then stored in rectum. Okay, then it is being stored in rectum, and it is being removed out from the body through anus by the process called defecation. Okay, so by defecation we used to remove that waste material out from the body time to time. So this is all about the egestion. Now here we have the diarrhea that we had to discuss. Again, it is very important. Okay, see, sometimes consumption of the dirty food means the contaminated food. Okay, food or maybe the leftover food. Suppose we have food left from the in daytime or and we are eating on night, or the night food that we are going to eat on early morning or maybe in daytime, this is called as beta leftover food. Okay, if you will eat that, okay, or unclean water can, if you will drink unclean water means dirt water, which can result in condition called diarrhea. Okay, diarrhea means continue like watery stool and vomiting takes place, and the loss of water takes place during this process, and which is called as dehydration of body, and it is very dangerous. It is an infection of the intestine. Okay, the diarrhea takes place due to the infection caused by microorganism, okay, in intestine, and involve passage of watery stool, okay, and frequently, watery and frequently, again and again and again. This leads to the loss of useful salt from the body along with the water, and which is called as beta dehydration, which is called as dehydration. Dehydration is the condition caused by the loss of water and salt from the body, and can be very serious, can be fatal. If it is not been treated on time, it can be fatal. Fatal means it may, that person may cause the death also if it is not been treated on time. It can be avoided by giving oral rehydration solution. It is called as ORS. Okay, it is being provided by the government free of cost at government hospital also to the patient suffering from the diarrhea. Okay, that oral rehydration solution must be provided to the patient if he is or she is suffering from the diarrhea. The World Health Organization WHO has recommended as a simple ORS remedy that can be made at home by adding salt and sugar to water. So at home we can prepare that also. If we'll have like clean water, here we have to add salt and sugar. Salt and sugar, that solution of salt and sugar can be act as a oral rehydration solution. So ORS sachet are also easily available in the chemist store and government hospital also. Okay, so this is nothing but the diarrhea. Okay, so here we have completed the human digestive system also.